So I think I finally worked out the solution to all world ills. Something that could end wars, put money in the right places, help solve mental health crises, and produce an empathy so rich that it wills us to share our resources, time, and energy until we're all happy. It's something so simple, so primitive, that is often overlooked by highbrow people. Because it is a solution not from our heads, this rational, respectable place, but from our hearts. And that is human in-person connection. I'm talking witnessing people's humanity. Being so curious about the people you meet that you want to hear about their hopes and their dreams and their struggles and their loves. It's choosing to see the potential of a person and choosing to believe that at their core, they are fundamentally good. It's every single one of us working so hard to make other people feel seen that we ourselves are then nurtured by this culture of care. As someone who studied cognitive science, I would love to ask you guys, why do you think we have such big brains? Why is it that humans have evolved to have one of the biggest brains compared to our body size? It's actually not for building better tools, it's not for the capacity to do maths. We have giant brains because we are deeply, complexly social. We are the most advanced social species, and our brains have evolved to be so big just so that we can manage all these wonderful, complex social relationships. We evolved to gossip, to grieve, to dance, to collaborate together, which explains why studies show that connection is more predictive of long-term health than quitting smoking or exercise. Having strong human connection is more important than not smoking or not exercising. Loneliness isn't just painful, it kills us. And today, inspired by the most incredible event that I ran last week called Casual Magic Day of Connection, I want to talk all things human connection. I want to talk about why we're so disconnected, how that has been manufactured, how it benefits the systems around us and the status quo, and why I've been thinking so much about connection recently, in-person connection, and why I think it is the solution to so many world ills. But before we jump into it, I want to set the tone by telling you two stories that happened this week. Two cute little encounters with strangers. Okay, so the first one happened a few days ago. I was on a packed train to London. It was rush hour, loads of people are going on their laptops, and I was sitting next to this man who had the window seat, and then I decided to do a meditation. And I did something called a metta meditation. It's a type of Buddhist meditation called loving kindness meditation. You essentially imagine people or animals or plants or yourself, and you imagine sending them good energy. You imagine this being as free from suffering, living in peace, all the good things they could possibly wish for coming true. You start by grounding yourself, getting into your breath, and then you just cultivate this strong feeling of love and kindness. And normally I would send this loving kindness to someone in my life. If a friend is struggling, or if a parent's going through a health thing, I would kind of visualize this person and just imagine sending them all my love and good energy. But that day, I randomly decided to send all my loving kindness to the guy sitting next to me. And so I spent about 5 or 10 minutes literally just pouring all my thoughts and love into this man next to me. I had no idea what's going on in his life, but I imagined him being free from suffering. I imagined good things coming his way. I imagined like a shining white light around him, protecting him from harm. And eventually, by the time I got to my stop, he was actually asleep. So I sort of gathered my things, got off the train, and I was walking along the platform for maybe a minute, completely in my own world, when suddenly I got a tap on my back. And I turn around, and do you know who it is? It's the guy that I was sitting next to. And in his hand, he has my phone. Because when I got up to get off the train, my phone fell out of my bag. And he had not only woken up, noticed, but he had then gotten off the train and ran down the entire platform to catch me. And the train left without him. He got off that train and ran just to give me my phone back, which is like, it just felt like this crazy moment of reciprocity, because obviously he had no idea that I'm sending him all this like good energy, but the fact that he kind of sacrificed his time to run and give me my phone back. It was just this like beautiful moment, remembering the kindness of strangers and remembering that people are fundamentally good and want the best for you. And he was just really sweet. I said thank you and that was kind of it. But his kindness left me with such an amazing feeling of being held by a stranger. Okay, and the second story, this is so cute. So I was at the airport because I went to Lisbon to go to this big TED Talk event. And because I'm a fancy bitch with an Amex card, I was in the Priority Pass lounge. Come on, she's doing fancy things. And it was really busy in the lounge, but I was going along to the food station. I was like, oh, let's get some, free stuff, why not? I'm there making my tea. And then there's this extremely fashionable, well-dressed man kind of wandering around the food station. And he was so fashionable, I couldn't help but notice him. It's rare to see straight men so well-dressed. And at one point, we sort of crossed paths and made eye contact. And I just remember thinking, he has really good energy. You know, you just feel this like split second of connection with someone. I felt it with him. And his eyes were like this gorgeous translucent blue. But then I was like, oh, I have things to do. Let me just go find a free seat, sit down. So I went and sat down, had my little tea. And then all of a sudden, who returns to their stuff next to me? It's that guy. So his table was the one next to me and he started a conversation and then he ended up moving to my table and we found out that we were on the same flight to Lisbon, which is a very strange coincidence, and we ended up talking for over an hour. We had a surprising amount in common. He's really into meditation. He was on his way to an eco-village, really believes in the power of community. He's a music producer, which is really cool. And we had such enriching discussions about toxic masculinity and how there aren't as many good male role models for young boys nowadays and how that's leading to this crisis of loneliness in young men and this seemingly increasing gender war online. And we just talked about our lives and he was just so interesting and vulnerable. And yeah, it was crazy how in the space of like an hour, we went from being strangers to feeling like friends. And when I got to Lisbon, we found out that our accommodations were relatively close. And so we met up in a park and sat in this little tree and did a meditation together, and he led us through the meditation, and we also did a metta meditation, and we just imagined sending good energy to each other and to all the people in the park. And he had gone to his favorite tea shop in Lisbon to buy me some tea. And anyway, just the entire interaction was so wholesome and nourishing, and it felt like this idea of when you are your authentic self and when you pour energy into yourself, you attract that similar energy. And it felt like the universe was gifting me this wonderful synchronicity of this aligned, like-minded person who I happened to be on the same flight with. And I walked away from these encounters thinking, people are so good. You never know when you're going to make a new friend. Like, strangers are just friends you haven't met yet. But I talked about these encounters on my Instagram story and also with some friends, and realised that this is so rare for the majority of people, to make connections with strangers, to feel open and trusting enough of strangers to want to have a chat. And I'm so interested in why. Why does it feel so hard to talk to strangers? Why do we feel so disconnected and isolated as a society and culture, particularly young people, after COVID? I feel like having missed out on a lot of core years of social interaction in person. Why is it we still struggle so much to kind of have these deep connections, even though it's something that so many of us really crave? And as I'm sure you're aware, the levels of loneliness right now, the desire for in-person connection, is just absolutely a skyrocketed high. We are so disconnected. But I believe that our disconnection is not an accident. It is very much by design, because disconnection is profitable. Let's be real, disconnection did not just happen one day. It benefits a lot of people, a lot of elements of the system as it is, for the majority of us to be so disconnected from each other, to be siloed in our little homes, on our screens, scared to meet people in person. Because when we're disconnected from each other, from our communities, even from ourselves, we are much easier to control and to sell to. When you feel empty, you are a lot more likely to buy things to fill that gap. When you feel insecure, you're more likely to compare, consume, and comply. Lonely people buy more. If you think you're not pretty enough to be loved, there's a skincare routine to make you prettier. If you feel like you're not rich enough to be worthy of love, There's a hyper-productive corporate job that can help you with that. If you're feeling lonely and sad, well, just buy a luxury candle and treat yourself to a weekend away and that will sort that out. But almost nothing you can buy replaces actual connection. The kind of connection where you feel seen, where someone loves you as you are. The kind where your nervous system feels safe to relax. But companies can't sell you that, so they sell you an illusion that you can buy the lifestyle, buy the dream, buy this belonging that you're craving. And politics, it is a similar thing. People in power really benefit from us feeling disconnected from each other, because when we're disconnected, we feel powerless, we feel like we're not capable of making change. You know, I'm just a small, tiny little dot in a wide system. So why should I even try? And if we're so busy fearing each other, fearing the other side, fearing different religions, fearing different cultures, fearing people who look different from us, then we'll never unite to change things. And the people in power love that. When you are stuck in your house and just consuming stories about how people are, rather than going out and having in-person first-hand experiences, your perception of different groups becomes so malleable and you can be taught animosity against people you haven't met. If you've never met a trans person in your life, you are much more susceptible to the kind of stories and messaging that the media feeds you about trans people. And when you're feeling so isolated, so disconnected from your humanity, then you don't see these groups of people for your similarities, you just focus on your differences. We start justifying our selfish choices through the lens of protecting ourselves from the people that we don't know. And from this place of disconnection, we can start to overlook or even promote injustice because we don't realise that we're all the same at our core. All humans just want the same things. No matter where you are from, no matter what you believe, we are far more similar than we are different. And a connected population is powerful. A connected population listens to other people's struggles and genuinely wants to help them and is willing to change systems in order to uplift and protect everyone. And therefore, a connected population is a threat to the status quo. So instead, we are distracted, we remain isolated, we have band-aid solutions for connection like social media, and all the while someone profits off of our disconnection. Something that I find really interesting to consider is the rise of AI. Obviously, AI has many, many issues, from environmental impacts to the training data that AI is trained upon being really biased, and AI therefore perpetuating that bias. But it feels somewhat inevitable. Not to be that person, but like the rise of AI is like the rise of the internet. You can proclaim that you're a Luddite and that you're not going to use it or get on board with it, but the scale at which it's being developed means I personally think it makes so much more sense to be pro-regulation for AI, like we understand that this thing's going to be here, so how can we develop like the right laws around it, the right systems around it, so that it actually benefits us rather than destroys us? But there's two interesting lenses that I see with kind of the future of AI to think about, one of which being that a lot of jobs just aren't going to exist anymore. Like so many jobs, like being a copywriter, even certain types of lawyers, like there just isn't a need for as many humans doing those jobs in an AI world. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what becomes of a world where we just don't have as many employment opportunities. In a dream world, we would have the kind of government that would provide all people with something like UBI, Universal Basic Income, which is this idea that every single citizen of a population gets a set amount of money every month, whether you're employed or not. You get like £1,000 a month, or you get £2,000 a month. Each person, just every month, for being alive, for living, you get that. And it's been proven in loads of studies to lift people out of poverty, to mean that people enjoy work more, they pursue more meaningful work, they're more creative, they're more entrepreneurial, all of these things. So it's like literally beneficial for society. And in an AI world, I think something like UBI would make so much sense to like make sure that people don't fall into poverty, but also the ideal world in AI would be meaningless jobs are taken by AI and humans can focus on what humans do best, like creativity, art, connection. And the jobs that AI can't do are the jobs most focused on connection, like being a teacher where you want this emotional support of a mentor, or any kind of care or healing job, you know, like the most human jobs are gonna still be human in an AI future, with this differentiating factor being connection. But the second interesting avenue that I find interesting in an AI world is thinking about what social media will look like. I don't know if you guys have felt this, but in the last 2 years, I have found social media so exhausting. Short form content has destroyed the internet. Like, it's amazing in some ways. Obviously, you get to learn from really interesting creators. You get to find creators so much more easily. Fame has become decentralized. So many people can turn creation into a job. But in order to keep up with consistency of the algorithm, creators just are forced to spew out content that doesn't provide as much value. And when we think about moving into a world of AI where AI influencers can be a thing, you won't even be able to tell what content online is made by a human and what's been made by an AI. There'll be AI video and AI deepfakes and just so much rubbish content on the internet. And so again, I think we're gonna crave in-person connection even more. I think in-person stuff is gonna be at premium. It's gonna be so desirable. There's already such a push from Gen Z and Gen Alpha and millennials even for analog experiences, the rise of minimal phones, dumb phones. People crave experiences that don't give them brain rot. We're starting to learn that scrolling for 2 hours doesn't make us feel good. And I think that's only gonna become more and more the case. We want to learn how to connect again in person. Yeah, so I'm just thinking so much about how radical it is to focus on deep connection with people, especially people who are very different from you. I think in-person connection is enough to fight extreme hatred and bias. Imagine you're a girly and you are bombarded with anti-men rhetoric online. Every piece of content you see tells you that men are utterly incapable. Sometimes true, but we're doing a generalization thing here. That men just want to dominate women, that men are dangerous, that they are predatory, that they don't care about women, that they only care about themselves, that they think they're superior in all contexts. That's the only kind of narrative you're being told about men. Imagine that. And imagine that all your friends are women, you don't really interact with men. All you know about men is what you're being fed online. Now imagine you are taken to a facilitated listening workshop. You sit in a circle with participants and you're given a partner who is a man. Your first thought, confirmation bias, oh my God, this is a man, so he must be really selfish and really predatory and I'm scared of him. But because it's part of an exercise and because it's part of a facilitated space, you're told to do an exercise where you have to listen to him answer questions for 3 minutes straight, no interruption, just listening to this experience. And as you make eye contact, as he talks honestly about his life experiences, something begins to shock you. You hear him share how lonely he is, how he feels like a failure because he feels like manhood is earning a lot of money and having a girlfriend, and he feels like because he doesn't have money, he's never going to find love. All he does is compare himself to other men around him and feel unworthy. He's terrified of talking to girls because he's been told online that women are going to break his heart and that women only want to date someone with a six-pack, and he doesn't have one. And you can't help but feel sorry for him. And you're kind of shocked with yourself, right? You're thinking, I hate men, but all of a sudden you're feeling sorry for this man. And as you start to connect, as you start to have this in-person, deep, vulnerable connection that forces you both into your humanity, you are forced to confront the idea that maybe individuals aren't the problem. Maybe it's the systems around us. You start to ask questions like, what makes men the way that they are? What does it mean to be a man? Who is telling me these stories? Who is influencing them? Who is influencing me? How can I help them? How can I support rather than judge? Connection and empathy are so radical. They elicit so much critical thinking about the way that things are, the beliefs that we think we have. But as I'm sure you guys know, connection with strangers in particular is not always easy. It can be very hard to find common ground with someone, especially across different cultures, different religions, different languages, different lived experiences. And so I think the 2 prerequisites to a dream human connection world are self-knowledge and a culture of care. The first, self-knowledge. I think that you must learn about yourself to a deep level if you want to have deep connections with others. You know this phrase, you can only know people as deeply as you know yourself? I really think there is truth to that, because when you are curious about your own struggles, your own emotions, your own desires, when you learn to have empathy for yourself, to not have shame about the things that you've done, you have the language to ask other people those questions. You have the empathy to understand that other people might have similar experiences. I really believe that I am an amazing conversationalist. I'm not confident in many of my skills, but I think I'm a very good listener, and I think I ask good questions, and I think the only reason that I am able to do that and connect with people from like any background really is because I've asked myself so many questions. And so it just feels like the plane of human experience feels so like broad, and it's not hard for me to feel like I relate to someone. Like if I'm speaking to someone and they're really sad, I have already asked myself questions like, what does sadness feel like in my body? Why do I maybe experience shame around my own sadness? What taught me to have shame around sadness? Why do I want to push these feelings away? Why do I view them as negative? What cultural narratives or narratives at home have shaped how I view my sadness? How does it feel when I express my sadness rather than resisting it? What helps me when I'm feeling sad? And in developing answers to those questions for myself, I am then able to understand how someone could be navigating their sadness. And I'm interested to ask questions about how that sadness feels potentially different for them. And secondly, a culture of care. Humans rise to the invitations of the systems around them. We've seen it in things like the banality of evil, where people in Nazi Germany who were just very average people, didn't really have that much hatred for a certain group, were slowly convinced and indoctrinated into doing the most insanely evil acts because the system around them celebrated it. If you wanted to spend your entire life volunteering and doing things for free, but you're in a system that requires you to earn money to survive, you're going to rise to the invitation of that system, and you will inevitably force yourself to work a well-paying job, even if your intrinsic desire was to do something else. If a system prizes competitiveness and doing better than other people over humility and lifting people up, then you are slowly going to become more selfish because that is celebrated. Which is why I love thinking about what the world could look like if we lived in a culture of care. How would we be invited to connect differently if we knew that there was a culture built for it, where other people would meet us there, where there is so much funding around the kind of spaces that facilitate that, like third places where you don't need to pay for a coffee in order to hang out there. A space literally designed to hold human connection. What if we created a culture where we celebrate our differences and are curious about these differences rather than being scared of them? I'm so inspired by this idea of a culture of care. It was introduced to me by my friend Ben, who helped me organise my event last Saturday, and so many ways that he conducts himself in event organisation are so inspiring to me. So for example, I hosted my event in the middle of the woods, and before the event started, we greeted the land. We went up to this altar and asked the land if it would receive our event. We promised to be guardians and stewards of this land, to treat it with reverence, to have gratitude for being here. You know, we create this culture of caring for the nature around us. We made space for people's emotions. You know, we tried to welcome people's nerves and fears and to allow them to have a quiet zone if they needed a moment for themselves. And in creating that culture of care, we were met with so much love from all the participants in return. Like, it was just such a beautiful day, guys. I wish you could have experienced it. Like, just the best of humanity, all these people who have never met before coming together and leaving arm in arm and making plans and feeling so connected to each other and listening to people deeply and being listened to. Oh, it's just stunning. Okay, my camera is nearly dead, so I'm gonna have to be quick. But yeah, I think it's so important that connection is facilitated, especially when it's not a habit. Like when I was younger, I did not even realise that there are so many tools we have to learn about how to have deep conversations, about how to hold space for someone, about what that looks like, learning how to active listen, learning how to ask questions in ways that feel safe for people. And we need more spaces that make people feel encouraged to try out having these kind of connecting conversations. When in connected community, beautiful things happen. One of the happiest times of my whole life was being at university in Minerva. I travelled with the same group of 160 people to 6 countries around the world during my degree, and I lived with them, I studied with them. I was the only one from the UK, like literally 160 people from all around the world. We had so many differences, so many different perspectives, but I learned so much about myself and the world through being so open, and I felt so constantly empowered and uplifted by this community. And I just want everyone to experience how nourishing it is when you have those kind of deep connections around you. So my invitation to you is to do one little small step that makes your life more connected. Can you become friends with someone who's very different from you? Can you host a dinner party and invite people from very different pockets of your life? Can you create a consistent club, like a weekly book club or a weekly art night, a space for people to come and connect and have this consistency of getting to know each other? Can you learn tools to connect with yourself more deeply so that you can also connect with others better? Things like journaling, yoga, meditation have really helped me gain a lot of self-knowledge. Therapy, of course. Games like We're Not Really Strangers are so special for kind of facilitating these connections. If you feel like you don't know what questions to ask friends, if you feel awkward having deep chats, like the structure of that game is just so helpful. There's also a free article called The 36 Questions to Fall in Love, and that article is amazing if you need some prompts that you can ask people. And how can you learn to be a better listener? I feel like when you show up as a safe space in people's lives, you attract people who also want to be a safe space to you. Obviously within reason, you have to have boundaries and you don't want to give that to someone who doesn't deserve it. Like, don't unnecessarily exhaust yourself or expend all your energy, but at the same time, practicing being a good listener does mean you attract deeper connections. Questions that I would like to ponder about community. Can you have multiple communities? If so, how do they intersect? What if these communities have different values? Do you need to have a hierarchical allegiance to a certain community when the values overlap? Must values of a community be defined in order for you to connect? Many thoughts. I love thinking about connection. I love people. Also, my event was just the best thing ever. I want to do it again. Guys, I'm just so blessed. You guys are the loveliest humans in the whole world. Like, I wish we could all hang out all the time. So lucky. Okay, I'm gonna go to sleep. I hope you have a day as gorgeous as you are. So connect with someone,